Hello everyone, I am Antara and today I am going to teach The Man Who Planted Trees by Viii with multimedia e-content. This lesson is from the class 8 English textbook Blossoms. So before we begin the story, let us learn something about its author. Viii was a famous French writer who lived from 1895 to 1970. Most of his stories are set in the Provence region of France. He had a deep love for nature and rural life, which is clearly reflected in many of his writings. The text, The Man Who Planted Trees, is adapted from his famous work of the same name and has been translated into English by Peter Doyle. Actually, through this story, Viii conveys the importance of nature and shows how the dedicated efforts of a single person can bring about remarkable change. Now, let us move on to the story and see how these ideas are beautifully presented. About 40 years ago, I went on a long hike through hills absolutely unknown to tourists. In that very old region where the Alps penetrate into Provence. It consisted of barren and monotonous lands. Nothing grew there except wild lavender. I was crossing this country at its widest part, and after walking for 3 days, I found myself in the most complete desolation. I was camped next to an abandoned village. I had used the last of my water the day before, and I needed to find more. These ruined houses of the village made me think that there must at one time have been a spring or a well there. There was indeed a spring, but it was dry. All life had disappeared. Here are some unknown words in this portion of the text. So, before we proceed further, let us understand their meanings one by one. First, we have the word hike. It means walking lengthy distances. Actually, it refers to a long walk, usually through hills or the countryside. Next, we have the word penetrate. It means to enter into the interior of. In other words, it means to go inside or pass through something. The next word is Provence. It means a former province of southeastern France. Actually, it is a region situated in the southeastern part of France. Now, let us look at the word desolation. It means loneliness. It refers to a state of emptiness, sadness, and being completely alone. Finally, we have the word barren. It means an empty and fruitless piece of land. Such land is dry and infertile, and very few plants can grow there. Now that we have understood the meanings of these words, let us move on to the next part of the discussion. Now I will analyze this part of the text, and for that I have divided it into 3 points. The first point is the beginning of the journey. About 40 years ago, the narrator went on a long hike. He traveled through the hills of Provence. The land was barren and monotonous. Only wild lavender grew there. Here, the narrator is traveling through a dry and lonely region. As you can see in the picture at the top left of this slide, the land was empty and looked the same everywhere. Only wild lavender plants could be seen, which is clearly shown in the picture at the bottom right. Through this description, the author shows that the area was lifeless and barren at the beginning of the story. The next point is a deserted village. After walking for 3 days, the narrator reached an abandoned village. He had run out of water and searched for a spring or a well, but the spring was completely dry. This part of the story emphasizes the narrator's loneliness. He found himself completely alone in the deserted village with no sign of human life. The empty and ruined surroundings created a feeling of sadness and isolation. His situation became even more difficult as he had exhausted his supply of water. Since water is essential for survival, finding the spring completely dry filled him with anxiety and disappointment. This incident highlights the harsh conditions of the region and helps the readers feel the narrator's suffering and helplessness. As you can see in the picture, the ruined village and the dry spring help us to visualize the scene clearly, even more clearly. The last point is condition of the region. The ruined houses showed that people had once lived there. There was no water and no sign of life. Everything appeared silent and empty. The narrator found himself in utter desolation. The condition of the region is extremely poor and full of despair. The area is covered with ruined and deserted houses, clearly indicating that people once lived there but later abandoned the place. The complete absence of water has turned the land into a dry and unfit for habitation. There is no movement or activity of people, animals, or any other living beings. Everything appears silent, empty, and lifeless, creating a deep sense of loneliness and desolation. Overall, the region looks completely abandoned and forgotten, reflecting severe hardship and neglect. In the picture, the ruined houses and isolated surroundings clearly reflect the deserted and lifeless condition of the region. In this atmosphere, the narrator travels alone without any companion and naturally feels isolated and desolate. Yeah, so that's it for today. Thank you, everyone. Wishing you happy learning.